Hey YouTube.com, this is Jason Ward from MakingStarWars.net. I remember sitting in an audience in 2005 to see George Lucas at Celebration, Indiana for the release of Revenge of the Sith. It was a pretty big deal because it was supposed to be the end of the Star Wars saga as we knew it. George Lucas announced that Star Wars The Clone Wars would be a CGI animated series, to which we were kind of lukewarm about because we just had two shows based off of it that were tie-ins to Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. But the big news was that a live-action Star Wars television series was coming. And no, it wasn't Star Wars The Mandalorian, it was Star Wars Underworld. At the time, we didn't know what it was called or even what the premise was. As time went on, we learned that it was about the underworld of the Star Wars galaxy. Behind the scenes, the development of that series would start to leak into other places in Star Wars, like the Pikes and 1313, all began popping up in Star Wars The Clone Wars as this live-action series that was supposed to happen just didn't. At one point, there were news stories that they brought in photographer Philip Bloom in to look at how DSLRs could be used as movie cameras, so that way they could basically film high-quality television in the quality of a Star Wars film using off-the-shelf cameras with really nice lenses, which I believe is one of the reasons that we got some of that time-lapse photography from Skywalker Ranch that was pretty beautiful. In interviews, George Lucas and Rick McCallum would state that the television series was going to be 100 episodes, and the Clone Wars was to be 100 episodes. That's because back then, making it to syndication, which is where they could re-show the show and make money off of it, was one way that Lucasfilm could float itself without a future in film. There's even a chance that had Underworld taken off and been produced and been greenlit, that we wouldn't have Disney Star Wars today at all, as Lucasfilm was essentially slowly dying without that revenue. At one point, HBO had a loose deal with Lucasfilm that they were going to show both the Clone Wars and Star Wars Underworld, but HBO wanted to be a partner in ownership of the property, and George Lucas was not having that. So the initial episodes of the Clone Wars were actually made longer than they needed to be, which is one of the reasons that when the deal fell through and they went to Warner Brothers, that the Clone Wars film was even produced. But without that backing from HBO, George Lucas just did not have the means to get Underworld off and running. But never a quitter, he still persevered and hired Ronald D. Moore from Battlestar Galactica to be the showrunner. The series was going to give us moments like how Han, Lando, and Chewbacca all met, what Boba Fett was up to at that time, which is probably why he was so okay with leaving Boba out of Revenge of the Sith, even after McCallum had promised that we would have it in Star Wars Insider. What the heck, man? The majority of the series was going to take place on level 1313, and it was going to be about a prominent, rich, powerful Coruscant underworld family. We were going to see how the underworld fueled the Rebel Alliance and supplied them with their black market X-Wing fighters and materials, and how corruption in the Empire aided it and created those markets. It sounded a lot like the conversation that DJ has with Finn and Rose in Star Wars The Last Jedi about how everybody loses and it's all about profiteering. But this was around 2005 to 2007. Deadwood and Rome were ushering in the golden age of television, and they were ready to take Star Wars there and to get in on that action, which is one of the reasons why I thought Timothy Oliphant's casting in Star Wars The Mandalorian was genius. It was sort of like bringing that little piece of Deadwood back. Supposedly, had the show been successful, Lucas and McCallum also wanted to have two spin-offs, one that was about the Empire and one that was about the Rebel Alliance. So had this happen, we would have had 3 Star Wars series concurrently going that all interconnected. There was even a moment where George Lucas was shooting down the idea of Episode 7 and saying, no more Skywalkers, but maybe somebody else. And I think that had to do with this idea that he had for Star Wars Underworld. One of the main characters was going to be a Jedi Padawan that went into hiding after Order 66. This character was to be a just person in an unjust world, like a sheriff in a crooked town. This character was, of course, a former Jedi. And I want to stress that no one was cast in Star Wars Underworld. But sources have told me that one of the actors that Lucas was looking at was Wentworth Miller, who he saw in the Dinotopia miniseries. Wentworth Miller at the time had the acting chops of Hayden Christensen, but I would say he reminded me of Hayden Hayden Christensen with a dash of Sam Witwer. As an actor, Wentworth Miller has come a long way, but when he was doing the Dinotopia television movie, it was pretty much on par with Hayden's acting in Attack of the Clones. As a prequel fan, I would have been fine with it, but I do know that the acting style in the more current Star Wars films works a lot better for mainstream audiences overall. But once again, we have a George Lucas Dinotopia connection, and the casting of one of the series' big three actors would have kind of been a big deal, I think. It probably says something about how much George Lucas loves Dinotopia. Recently, we've seen test footage released from Star Wars Underworld, and we had a logo show up in a book, and there's concept art out there of Wentworth Miller as a Jedi from Star Wars Underworld. I don't have it, so don't ask. So it's kind of hard to be super upset about the lack of Star Wars Underworld considering how many Star Wars shows we have right now and how Star Wars on TV feels like it's kind of on fire, it's like it's doing really good. But I do wish we just had a little bit more of that George Lucas weirdness, and I'm always going to be kind of bummed that it didn't happen. At the same time, who knows, maybe someday it will. Maybe someday they will take those 50 scripts and the various conditions that they were in and finish them up and make it into a series. It could still happen. And who knows, maybe one day Wentworth Miller will get his chance to have a stab at the Star Wars universe. I think he'd fit in pretty well. Let me know what your thoughts are, and I'll see you guys in the next video.